For 15 long years, I believed Kelly and I had built a life full of trust and memories. We'd weathered storms and celebrated quiet victories, even though we never had children because of her fertility struggles. But in recent months, something shifted beneath the surface. The warmth that once enveloped our marriage began to fade, leaving behind a cold distance. Our intimate connection dwindled to almost nothing. Every time I reached out, hoping to recapture our lost spark, she would offer weak excuses and brush me aside. At first, I told myself that maybe she was under stress, dealing with private burdens she wasn't ready to share. But then came the details. The endless, secretive texting, the suppressed giggles when her phone lit up, instantly silenced by my presence. The hushed conversations that ceased the moment I did. Suddenly, she started dressing up for work, layering on perfume as if meeting someone new every day. And then the most alarming habit of all, her phone always kept face down as if hiding confidential messages. A nagging gut feeling began to claw at me. I'm not one to be paranoid, but I wasn't blind either. I had to see the truth. So I did what any desperate man might. I enlisted a private investigator. 3 slow, anxious weeks later, I met Harris, a no-nonsense old-school PI, at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. Harris slid a bulky folder across the table. "Everything you need is in here," he said, stirring his coffee with a knowing look. As I flicked through photos, messages, call logs, even recorded conversations, my heart sank. There she was, Kelly, the woman I'd loved for 15 years, caught wrapped in the arms of another man, her boss, smiling over shared secrets at a restaurant, holding his hand in public, even stealing a kiss in the dark of his car. Harris cleared his throat, signaling that the worst was yet to come. I looked up slowly, my jaw tightening as he said, "There's more." With a grim nod, he slid a flash drive across the table. "They're planning something big. They're leaving together next week, and they intend to tell you before they go." His words hit me hard. "But you're not supposed to have a choice in the matter." "What do you mean?" I asked. With a heavy sigh, Harris pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. Immediately, I recognized Kelly's voice, almost mocking. "He's not going to like this. George still believes we're a happy little family. Then we make sure he plays along. And if he resists, we have options." The world around me stilled. My wife, my partner of 15 years, had been plotting to ruin me if I didn't submit. "If they follow through with this plan," Harris continued in a low tone, "your life as you know it will be over. Even if you manage to clear your name later, the permanent stain will remain." I clenched my fists, sweat forming at the base of my neck. They believed they'd stolen the upper hand. As Harris met my stare, he asked simply, "So what are you going to do?" I exhaled slowly, masking the quiet fury boiling within me. They didn't know that I was already planning my counterattack. For the next 2 days, I wrestled with dark thoughts. I considered the unthinkable, eliminating both Kelly and her lover forever. But I knew that path would lead me straight to prison, a fate I wasn't willing to risk for a woman who had taken so much. I contemplated confronting Frank directly, or even lashing out at Kelly, but none of that felt right. Instead, I devised a plan that would not only hurt her, but fundamentally dismantle the very life she cherished. That Friday evening, I came home, steeling myself for what I knew was coming. In the foyer, Kelly waited, dressed too sharply for a simple night in. Her makeup was immaculate, and her hair styled to perfection. At the door, 2 suitcases sat ominously. I stepped inside casually, pretending nothing was wrong. "Where are you off to?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. Kelly's smile wavered as she replied softly, "I'm not leaving you, George. I'm just going on a little vacation." She moved closer, almost tenderly, as if softening the blow. "I'm taking a week off." I tilted my head in confusion. "Oh, really? And who with?" Her eyes flickered and she hesitated a heartbeat before answering, "With Frank." I felt the space between us collapse but maintained a measured tone. "Your boss? Is this an office outing? Or does it go further?" Kelly's forced laugh was almost breathless. "It's more than just work, George. Frank is different. He listens to me, treats me with care. I'm attracted to him, and I need to experience that, even if it's just for a week." I remained silent, watching her as she spun her web of half-truths. "It's just 1 week of exploring," she continued, her voice soft, yet edged with determination. Maybe I'll even learn a few new tricks to bring back home. I let the silence fall, forcing her to spell out her intentions. George, if you let me do this, our marriage is over. Her gaze held mine as she added, if I don't, then believe me, I'll make sure you're ruined in society. I'll drag your name through the mud with false domestic abuse charges. The law's on my side. A slow, bitter smile crept across my face. So you're ready to stoop to lies in court just to have your week of passion? She grinned, a wild light in her eyes. Yes, she retorted, barely glancing away. Leaning in, I whispered, you know there are serious consequences for perjury. Some laws don't bend for TikTok scandals. She scoffed dismissively and declared, I don't care. I'm going, and I'm enjoying it, on my terms. I leaned back, my tone icy as I replied, then know this. I'm not going to fight you. I'm just letting you go. While I deal with the fallout. Kelly's response was a slow, dramatic arch of the head. Good. I expect you to hold the house clean until I get back. I smiled, a slow, cold smile, and said, it'll be spotless. For a fleeting moment, her eyes narrowed, uncertainty flashing before she forced her smile back on. Without a further word, she grabbed her bag, stepped outside, and merged into the waiting taxi, leaving me in a silence heavy with betrayal. The moment the taxi disappeared down the street, I pulled out my phone. Now was the time to execute my plan. First up, the phone company. Hi, I need to cancel one of the lines on my account, I said coolly to the operator. I provided verification with practiced ease and then, with a smirk, stated, cancel Kelly's line. She won't be needing it any longer. With a few swift clicks, Kelly's iPhone was reduced to nothing more than an expensive paperweight. Next, I dialed the credit card company. Hello, cancel all secondary card holders on my account, I said. When they asked which one, I replied, Kelly Smith. Moments later, they confirmed the cancellation. No more lavish shopping sprees, no more fancy dinners charged to my account, no more fueling her extravagant new life. I then called Donald, our trusted real estate agent. George, I've been expecting your call, Donald answered. We're selling the house, I declared flatly. Frank told me you have buyers lined up. Indeed, Donald replied with a practical tone. I've got 2 serious offers already. When can we close? Give me 2 days. I need to clean up the reminders of her presence first. Donald chuckled lightly. I hear you, George. I'll take care of the rest. I felt more resolved than ever. The next morning, a team of movers arrived, and I went through every room, indicating every bag, every piece of clothing, every cherished piece of jewelry that belongs solely to Kelly. I told them, pack everything that is hers and store it in a rental unit. I'll provide an address later. As the workers labored, I meandered through her belongings, each item a reminder of what we once shared. And then I found it, her wedding dress. Gently, I traced the fabric with trembling fingers. This was the dress she wore on the day she vowed to love me forever, a vow she shattered so effortlessly. I set it aside to keep, while everything else was boxed up and removed from my home, my past. 2 days later, I hosted 2 separate couples who came by to see the house. The first, a couple in their late 30s, Mark and Susan, hoped for a larger home for their family, while Ethan and Rachel, newlyweds, sought a fresh start in a promising neighborhood. During a tour of the spacious home, Susan couldn't resist asking, It's a beautiful home. May I ask why you're selling? I replied with a wry smile, because my wife won't need it anymore. A heavy silence followed as Mark and Susan exchanged a glance, and Ethan's wife, Rachel, hesitated before inquiring, Did something happen? I simply shrugged. You could say that. They didn't press the matter. Soon enough, they were distracted by the gleaming hardwood floors, the bright kitchen, and the inviting backyard, oblivious to the dark undercurrents that had led to this day. 2 days later, with Mark and Susan's offer sealed, I met them one final time in the empty living room. I handed over the keys, saying, Make sure to change the locks. Mark nodded appreciatively. Then, reaching into my pocket, I produced an envelope and said lightly, Here's a little extra. I'll pay for the locksmith. Susan gasped. That's incredibly kind. I replied, Think of it as making sure nothing from my past re-enters this new chapter. With a firm handshake, I walked away from what had once been our home, each step lifting a burden I'd carried for far too long. Later that evening, I met Donald at a quiet bar. He was already there, savoring a neat whiskey. As soon as I sat down, he slid an envelope my way. I raised an eyebrow and asked, "What's this?" With a smirk, he replied, "Call it a little divorce perk. My commission was so good, I figured I'd share some with you. A divorce fund, if you will." I let out a short laugh. "And what makes you so sure I'm divorcing her?" Donald leaned back, as if it were a foregone conclusion. "The moment you mentioned that your wife won't need the house anymore, I knew. She's out of your life." I shook my head in disbelief and raised my glass in tribute to new beginnings, a small moment to remind me to subscribe for more real-life revelations and share your thoughts down below. Now let's shift the scene, a story told from another perspective entirely. The moment I touched down on Molokai Island, a rush of anticipation ignited within me. The warm ocean breeze caressed my skin, carrying hints of salt and tropical blossoms. Frank clasped my hand as we entered the Grand Resort lobby. With a husky whisper at check-in, he asked, "Ready for the best week of your life?" I couldn't help but grin. I had been longing for this liberating escape. No sooner had we reached our suite with its stunning ocean views than Frank pulled me into a fervent kiss, one so desperate and urgent that we lost ourselves in a tangled passion on the sheets. It all happened so quickly, intense, almost feverish. And when the moment subsided, Frank lay back with a satisfied murmur. Greatest service on arrival, as if he were reviewing some luxury hotel. I laughed, still catching my breath, as we lay together bathed in the soft hum of the ocean outside our balcony. Soon hunger set in, and a sumptuous lunch found its way to our room. But we barely touched our food before Frank pulled me onto his lap once more, teasing and tempting me to another round of passion. "Shouldn't we save some energy for later?" I joked between giggles. Frank's dark eyes held no room for compromise. "Why waste time when I've got you all to myself?" In a whirlwind of desire and intimacy, we rushed through morning, afternoon, and into the evening. After a particularly exhausting bout, as I lay spent on the bed, I asked, "So, what's the plan for tonight?" But even as I spoke, Frank was already re-engaging, his hands igniting a familiar fire along my skin. By the time we finished, my body ached in a delicious way, too tired to even ask for dinner service. As we devoured our meal in bed, his occasional touch sent shivers down my spine, despite the lingering emptiness that refused to fade. When morning arrived, the gentle rustle of the ocean breeze and soft sunlight spilling through the curtains stirred me. Frank still slept soundly, his presence both comforting and distant. I quietly slipped to the bathroom to freshen up. Returning to a room where silence reigned, I stepped out onto the porch, inhaling the crisp, salty air fully. A moment of peace before Frank reappeared, wrapping his arms around me, greeting me with a sleepy, "Morning." For a fleeting second, I hoped for a warmth reminiscent of what I once had with George. Someone who always held my hand in crowded streets, who made every small moment feel cared for. But the shadow of loneliness lingered. Later, after lunch, when Frank finally dressed and suggested we venture out, I nearly burst with anticipation. Nervous energy mingled with hope. I fixed my hair, applied a touch of makeup, and followed him out the door. We strolled through a bustling local market, alive with the scent of fresh fruit and savory street food. Yet something felt off. Frank never held my hand as we wandered, never glanced back to ensure I was right there beside him. I had always had someone like George who would wrap his arm around me in such moments. Instead, Frank's indifference stung. I paused at a small stall displaying handcrafted earrings. A pair made of delicate seashells caught my eye, ethereal and perfectly unique. I stepped closer for a better look, only to realize I had forgotten my purse. Glancing around for Frank, I discovered he was already a few shops away, browsing sunglasses and absorbed in his phone. "Why did you leave me behind?" I confronted him, trying to hide my hurt. Nonchalantly, he shrugged. "You should have called. I was right here." Desperate for the tenderness I once knew, I suggested, "I really want to buy those earrings." Frank only offered, "Let's come back tomorrow. This market isn't too exciting anyway." My frustration simmered as he walked away, leaving me alone among a sea of strangers. Later, back at the resort, I tried desperately to shake off the disappointment. I changed back into my bikini and sought solace in the pool. But even there, surrounded by laughing families and cuddling couples, I felt isolated amid the crowd. That night, lying in the hotel room next to Frank, who, after another round of passion, drifted off quickly, I longed for the comfort of a voice from home. I kept expecting a missed call from George, a message that would melt away my loneliness, but nothing came. The emptiness was deafening. I tried to convince myself that I was content, that passion and freedom were enough, but the quiet ache in my heart persisted. By the second day, I could no longer ignore the bitter truth. Despite the incredible, almost mechanical heat in the moments we shared, I felt hollow. I'm here with Frank, I repeated to myself, but I long for something real. That night, after Frank had once again fallen asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, questioning whether my choices had led me astray. Early on the third morning, I slipped out again, this time to embrace the beach alone. The cool, salty breeze and the rhythmic crash of the waves initially soothed me. I dug my toes into the sand, silently wishing George were there to hold my hand, as I once knew he would. When I returned to the resort, I hoped Frank might join me, but he remained fast asleep, oblivious to my absence. Feeling abandoned, I ventured out to the market on my own, resolved to finally purchase those earrings. But as fate would have it, when I entered the little shop, the seashell earrings were gone, a one-of-a-kind treasure snatched away forever by another customer. I overheard the shopkeeper apologetically whisper, "They were sold last night." I left with a bitter sigh, my heart heavy with regret and longing. Returning later to the room, Frank greeted me with a lazy smile and a half-empty wine bottle. "Hey, you're back. Come on, show me some love," he murmured, pulling me roughly toward the bed. I gave in mechanically, our performance lacking the intimacy I craved. As his touches faded after our lovemaking, I lay staring at the ceiling once more, feeling numb and empty. Frank casually remarked, "Damn, that was good. You're amazing," as if our connection hadn't just shattered something crucial. I managed only a faint smile while silently mourning the loss of what we once had. The next morning I awoke earlier than Frank, resolute to seize the day. I dressed in my bikini, wrapped a sheer cover-up around me, and walked down to the beach for a moment of clarity. Every crash of the waves seemed to echo the emptiness growing deeper within me. Returning to the resort, I found Frank still lost in sleep, and the weight of loneliness grew unbearable. I even tried calling George's number from his phone. I hoped something, anything, would come through, but my calls went unanswered. With mounting panic, I discovered that not only was my phone dead, but my credit card had been canceled as well. In that moment, dread coursed through me. Had George cut me out completely? I hurriedly called the reception for a landline and tried George's number again, but it rang endlessly with no response. My heart pounded as the realization dawned. My connection to everything familiar was severed. In a fit of anger and despair, I hurled a pillow against the wall as Frank, already casually nursing a glass of wine on the couch, remarked with a smirk, "Looks like someone's in a bad mood." I wanted nothing more than to hear George's voice, just one reassuring word, but all I received was silence. Then amid the chaos of my thoughts, a small haunting whisper in my mind reminded me, "You wanted this. You got exactly what you asked for." The next 4 days dragged painfully by. Frank's physical presence was constant, but his passion was empty, his touches mechanical, as if we were mere actors in a play devoid of true emotion. I yearned to be held, to be cherished, yet my heart ached with loneliness. Each night, as I lay awake with tear-stained pillows, I questioned the choices I'd made. Finally, the checkout day arrived. Frank stretched as we walked from the resort with a satisfied, almost smug grin. "Man, that was the most relaxing week ever," he declared, his tone brimming with false cheer. I could only nod, silently vowing that I was never to be trapped with a man who could so easily make me feel unwanted. The flight home was a quiet, desolate journey for me. While Frank dozed off contentedly, I spent the whole time staring out the window, my mind consumed by memories of George, the one whose love I'd once taken for granted, but now longed for more fiercely than ever. I imagined holding him close, burying my face in his chest, whispering how much I needed him. I promised myself that I would never, ever let this kind of betrayal happen again. When we finally landed, Frank and I grabbed our bags and stepped into the cool evening air. Frank turned to me with a wry smile. "I had fun, didn't I?" he said, then added with a smirk that stung, "Now hopefully your cuckolded husband won't cause any trouble." His words made me wince, and in that moment something inside me snapped. I pushed him away, refusing his feigned affection. "Goodbye," I said coldly, and without another word turned and left him behind. I flagged down a taxi, each step of the journey home echoing with angst and regret. Arriving at what I believed was our home, I stepped out of the taxi, my hands trembling with the weight of it all. I fumbled with my keys before inserting one into the lock, only to find it wouldn't turn. Confusion gave way to panic as I knocked on the door. The chime sounded oddly unfamiliar, and when the door finally creaked open, I was met not by George, but by a young woman in yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt. "Yes?" she asked warily. "This is my house," I stammered. I peered past her. Something was off. The walls were a different color, the furniture entirely foreign. "This is my home," I insisted, my voice rising in desperation. The woman frowned. "I think you're mistaken. We bought this house just a few days ago. We're moving in." My heart stopped as I tried the keys again. Nothing worked. A cold dread descended upon me as I realized that everything I'd known was slipping away. George had sold our home, cutting me out completely. I stumbled back into the street, my legs weak and trembling. With no phone, no credit, and feeling utterly alone, I wandered until I found a 7-Eleven. Desperate, I bought the cheapest burner phone I could find, my hands shaking as I paid. Outside, the biting cold air did little to soothe my turmoil. I dialed for a taxi and headed straight to my mother's place. The doorbell chimed a familiar tune from my childhood, and for a moment I felt safe. But when the door opened, my mother's eyes were guarded and distant. Without a word, she let me in, and then disappeared into the kitchen after placing a quick call. Minutes later, the doorbell rang again. My mother reappeared with an unreadable expression. "It's for you," she said softly, handing me an envelope. My pulse quickened. I frantically hoped it was George calling back to set things right. I tore open the envelope, and there they were. Divorce papers, cold legal transcripts, text messages, motel receipts, even transcripts of my conversations with Frank. Near the bottom lay a small USB drive taped to a final sheet with a note. "Watch the video on the USB." Sitting at my mother's laptop, I hesitated only for a moment before plugging it in. The screen flickered, and soon a video loaded, one that took me back to a time when hope actually felt real. There, on a familiar hill where George had once knelt to propose, he stood solemnly beneath a rushing wind. "Hey, Kelly," his voice began evenly, "if you're watching this, then you already know you got what you wanted." I felt my throat tighten as his recorded message continued. "I've sent all the transcripts and evidence to our offices, and even shared details with Frank's wife. Soon Frank will be out of a job, and so will you." My stomach dropped, and a cold fury built within me as I absorbed his words. He continued, "I'm done with all of this. I'm reclaiming my life. Consider this your final warning. I'm walking away, and you're on your own." I barely had time to process his threat before a familiar, unfathomable final act unfolded on screen. He held up a pristine white dress, the dress I had treasured, the one that symbolized all our promises, and, with calm precision, doused it in gasoline. The lighter flicked, the flame danced, and within seconds the dress was engulfed in roaring flames. My tears blurred the images as I witnessed every cherished memory burn away. Now let's rewind all the way back to George's perspective. For 7 agonizing months, the courts delayed finalizing the divorce. During that time, legal battles, depositions, and every scrap of evidence Kelly had meticulously assembled played out. Ron, our divorce lawyer, had warned me from the start, "We'll be ruthless. There's no giving her an inch." And so it was. Once Ron presented that damning recording of Kelly threatening false domestic abuse charges, it was all over. The judge saw right through her charade, and any shred of sympathy vanished. I refused to meet her eyes in court. After everything, I owed her nothing more. The house, once our sanctuary, was divided as a marital asset. I did what I thought was fair. I split the proceeds, but it wasn't out of kindness. It was a final severing of ties. A few bitter weeks later, Kelly left town without a backward glance, and that was the last I ever heard of her. I moved on to a sleek, modern condo near my office. Clean, minimalist, and unmistakably mine. With every encounter at the gym, with each new glance I received on the street, I slowly began to rebuild my confidence. I wasn't a hero, but maybe one day I'd even find the love I truly needed. As our stories now merge here on our channel, I invite you to share your thoughts below. Leave a like if you found this story as intense as I did, and subscribe if you want more tales of heartbreak and unfiltered truth. Every comment matters to us, and your feedback helps fuel more honest storytelling. This is the tragic tale of two lives torn apart, of a man who fought back in silence and a woman who chased illusions of passion until everything crumbled. In the end, all that remained were the ashes of promises burned and homes sold without a second thought. The memories of what was once real now lost in a sea of legal battles, broken hearts, and irreversible decisions. Thank you for listening and for staying with us through every twist and turn of this heartbreaking journey. Remember to hit subscribe, drop your reactions in the comments, and share this video if it resonated with you. Your engagement is our lifeblood as we continue to explore the depths of real human drama.